Hello everyone, this is Santiago Vásquez.
And I'm Martin Cervantes,
Welcome to the Dot Pod.
where communication truly matters.
And today is a very special day. We have a very special woman, a woman that I have been knowing for many, many years. And I respect her because she has a character that I believe every one of us should have. She's a very honorable woman, a very strong and powerful woman. Would you please tell our community who you are?
My name is Selia Moya. I am a licensed mental health professional. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I moved out here over 20 years ago, started a family, and I decided to go to school. I completed a bachelor's degree in social work at the University of Kansas. And through my education and the opportunities that were given to me, I was able to complete a master's degree through a one-year advanced standing program with the University of Kansas as well. So I have a master's degree in social work, and I'm also a licensed mental health professional in the state of Kansas.
So, what inspired you to get into social work and the mental health program? What inspired you to do that?
So there were many different opportunities and things that I wanted to do when I first started school. As I can imagine, like, you talk to many young people and they are not sure what they want to do. So I thought I would want to become a lawyer. So I went to school originally to complete a Juris Doctorate degree. It did not work out because I already had a family when I started school. I was a very young mom. So I had two daughters. So by the age of 20, I had two daughters. So I had to I had to decide what I wanted to do, and it had to be something that was quicker, but then it had to be something also that was impactful and meaningful. And I always thought, like, I need to do a job that I like and I enjoy doing, and no matter what it pays, because we all know social services pays really well. It has to be something that I'm going to like to do, like, for like the rest of my life. And I chose social work because it's you can practice in many settings. You could do hospital social work, you could do school-based social work, you could do mental health, you can do therapy stuff. You can, you do advocacy, like national work, state, like, legislator stuff. Like, you could do a lot of stuff with social work, basically. So I was convinced that this probably was an opportunity for me to just kind of like find myself and find a direction where I really wanted to be. So when I went into school, I learned a lot about mental health, because they do teach you about, like, the theories of, like, practice. They teach you about, like, just like, development, human development, psychology. It encompasses a lot of things, like just going to social work. So you're studying a lot of things about human behavior. So when I was there, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about, like, my own culture, how my own culture is probably like with the values and everything that's taught in social work practice. Is like a lot of us, like in like the Latino culture, really kind of don't believe in those things. We challenge a lot of those things. We are, our culture is just different. And so I decided to really kind of narrow it down and study, like, human behavior and more, because I know I've shared with you guys that my youngest brother has schizophrenia. So I thought about, like, all of that and the challenges and barriers and everything he's gone through, and how in Kansas there really wasn't a lot of effort to help him or help the family kind of like navigate through all of those challenges that he was having, as far as, like, how to obtain psychiatric treatment, how to make sure that he's compliant with medication, how to take care of himself with a lifelong disease that he will carry, that will impact the whole family. So I really wanted to do something that was meaningful to me, not only because of my brother, but just because I know and I'm aware that many people face mental health issues in our community, and they need help. They need someone that's bicultural, they need someone that's bilingual, they need someone that's understanding, and that is going to be able to help them reach their goals.
And we touch a few points here with Judge Caitlin, about mental health. Then we had Steve Polk also helping EMTs, first responders,
Dealing with PTSD
and all that. So to us, this is very important to send the message out to our community that, you are not a freak. you are not a piece of garbage if you are dealing with mental health.
If you're dealing with anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, there are people to help you out there. And in her case, she's bilingual, and like she said in the very beginning, this is a very impactable job. We're not social workers or people that are working in the mental health care system are not going to become rich, even if you get a PhD.
No.
Right? And one thing that she mentioned in the Latino community, in the Hispanic community, and we were talking about this prior to the show, is that in the Latino community, it is taboo to speak about matters of mental health. And sometimes they just look at, and you're gonna have to pardon my language, I will do my best to translate this to the best of my ability in a very politically correct way. They will look at you and they will call you, ese pendejo está loco. Meaning,
Don't be a baby. Come on, get up.
that
don't
fool,
cry.
that fool, that idiot is just crazy. Just
Yeah.
leave him alone. Nobody cares. Or somebody will say, le echaron brujería. Somebody put a
Witchcraft,
yeah, somebody did witchcraft, or somebody put the evil eye on him, and that's why he's acting the way he's acting. And then the person with the mental health issues ends up at the local santero or the local witchcraft person that is going to do all the rituals,
All the cleansing.
the cleansing and the egg goes under the bed
In a cup of water.
and a cup of water, and that goes on from Mexico, I mean, obviously now in the United States, all the way down to the tip of South America.
Yep.
And but we need to educate ourselves.
Yeah, and this is what is important for us to bring this out to our community, to let you know that you're not alone, that there is help, that you're not really the only one. A lot of us are dealing with this stress, PTSD,
Depression, anxiety.
depression, things like that. And sometimes we're afraid to talk about it because we don't want to be labeled. We don't want to have the stigma that, stay away from that person because he or she, are dealing with this. Let's not see it like that. Let's see it as an illness that it can be prevented or maybe helped.
Cure. It
Cure.
can be controlled, if not cured, at least controlled. But let's go back to the true expert, because you and I, we're just a couple. We're just a couple of troglodytes, meaning knuckle draggers. Okay, so let's go. Okay, so you have worked throughout the metro area.
Yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about how mental health issues are affecting our community, in particular during this last year of the COVID-19.
So like he mentioned, I've worked for community mental health centers, 2 big community mental health centers in my career, here in Wyandotte County and in Johnson County. My primary area of focus has been in emergency psychiatric services. Currently, I'm taking a pause to raise a family, so I'm not working at this moment. But I was working for a brief minute when the onset of COVID started, and I know that there was a significant impact in the way that people felt. People felt unsafe, extremely insecure and unsure about the state of the world overall. So it produced a lot of anxiety. People, and it's normal to have some anxiety. It is normal to have anxiety. It's normal to have, feelings of uncertainty. It's when when you're losing sleep over it, when you're not able to eat right, when you're not able to, be around other people, when you're isolating, that we have to look at what else is going on. So the COVID-19 has made people feel so insecure that most of the time, if people are predisposed to mental health illness, they can start developing some symptoms, and that onset can be at any age. So you see it in children and you see it in adults or late adulthood. So that is a very it's not uncommon to start developing these symptoms at a very, very early age. Usually children will show more like behavioral issues.
Okay, and I was going to ask that. Can you give us an example to
Yeah.
what to look for?
Yeah, what to look for. What are the signs at the very the very
Early.
first stages? Is it something that occurs at an early age, or is it something that occurs when you're in the process of puberty and prepubescent kids, or is it something that can develop later on in life? Some of the
Yeah, so I've worked from every age range at this point in my career, from from the prenatal phase all the way to like my oldest client was 112 years old. So
Wow.
mental illness could develop at any point in your lifespan, really.
Wow.
You know, sometimes there can be something that triggers the onset of it. You know, it could be like, you know, a loss at an early age. It could be abuse or trauma. And with children, particularly with children, and I wish I would have had like, you know, my friend here who is an expert in child mental health, but in children you will start seeing behavioral issues. You know, maybe sleep changes, sleep interruptions, inability to sleep, sleeping too much, and just acting out. They display behaviors differently sometimes than adults. With adults, what we see generally is the isolation, withdrawing, maybe, you know, they're taking more sick days, you know, maybe they are not participating in like the normal activities that they would, you know, maybe they're not meeting up with their friends as often as they used to, like things that were normal to them, they're not able to participate in those things. We start seeing like insomnia, or we start seeing hypersomnia, which is like sleeping more, sleeping in, just generally feeling more tired. And then sometimes, you know, you start hearing them talk about how they feel like they're lost, like they're hopeless, they don't have motivation, they don't know what they're doing with their life. And sometimes we do hear people start talking about ending their life in suicide, and that's something that we have to be aware of, that it does happen. And but generally it can start anywhere. People at an older age, when they start becoming you know, elderly and they start getting sick, you start hearing them, you know, just feel, you know, hopeless, like I'm never going to get better, I'm old, I'm not able to do the things that I'm able to do anymore. And they generally do become more withdrawn. They don't answer calls, you know, they don't want to participate in like family activities anymore, and they start talking a lot about death and dying and wanting to die. So all of this, you know, this is just kind of like how can I tell you, like this, there's like not, everybody experiences mental illness differently, and everybody can be impacted by mental illness. It's when it's prolonged, when it's, you know, it's more, you know, when you start noticing that this is like going on for like, you know, it's been 2 weeks and people are still feeling this way. It's been 30 days, you know, people are still feeling this way. I think that, you know, at that point, if people that are around them, if they notice, you know, they're acting differently, they're saying things differently, they're not as participatory. I'm not even saying the word right. If they're not participating, if they're not in like events like in normal activities like they used to, if they're not answering your calls, things like that, I think that's the time when we should start becoming concerned about their well-being.
I just have to remind everybody, today we are on the rooftop at Split Log, and there's a lot of police activity going around, so I hope it does not interrupt the sound, you know, and our voices and things like that. So just bear with us.
We'll figure it out, but this is the truth of what's going on in our city. Yes, we hear police sirens, we hear ambulance, the fire department. As we were here, and you look at my compadre here, Mr. C, he was looking around a little bit fidgety. It's because to the north of us, we heard shots fired. And shortly thereafter, within just a few seconds, we hear the sirens, all the activity that is going on. So we apologize for that. But this applies to what is going on today, where trauma affects everyone. It affects firefighters and police officers, first responders. They see nothing but tragedy all day long. And then we look at in the cases of elderly people that start developing dementia, Alzheimer's, and then we see children that perhaps are sexually abused. This can also lead to some kind of a mental illness. Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Well, I think those are things that can trigger mental illness, not saying that there's we have to be aware that people are just predisposed and can have mental illness.
Yeah.
But sometimes it is triggered by trauma. I'm pretty sure, Martha, you grew up in Los Angeles, right? I grew up in Los Angeles. I hear gunshots and I just like automatically, like, you know, I look around. I'm like, what's going on? You know, I'm always living in the yellow zone, right? So like, you know, that automatically, like, he has an automatically response to what's going on. I heard the gunshots fired, but then, you know, I've been like trained not to be, you know, like continue what you're doing and stuff like that. But you know, I've dealt with my own like trauma of like living in the hood and, you know, hearing the helicopters, the gunshots, and you know, it's taken a lot of like effort to go through that. But we're seeing Martin right now experience, you know, his own, you know, this is his own response. His body is responding. He has no control over what he's doing at this moment because his body is being protective of himself. So he is looking around. He's, you know, a little bit hypervigilant. You know, he's ready to like probably like, you know, throw us out to the side or something. I don't know what he's prepared to do, but his body is responding to traumatic events, you know, to experiences that he's had in his past.
Yeah.
And so
you're absolutely right.
And so I noticed, you know, he got a little bit more anxious and stuff when, as you know, the gunshots were fired, and then we heard the police, the sirens. Of first responders. So, you know, this is kind of a normal response. You know, this is how your body responds. Your body never forgets fear. So this is very normal what he's going. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with him. You know, he has had an anxiety right now. You know, he's responding as like anybody else would, you know, but he is not doing anything that is wild or abnormal.
As a matter of fact,
well, I'm by an expert here, so I know he will tell me what to do.
As a matter of fact, Mr. C looked at me and immediately said, should we stop the interview? I said, no, let's continue with it. So I reacted in a different way. Perhaps it's because of all the years that I had of training as a police officer, but not every police officer is the same. Now, one thing that you mentioned prenatal and predisposition of mental health. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because prior to the interview, and of course, you know, we have to respect your privacy, you mentioned something about a side of your family in which there was or there is mental illness. So I'd like to know more about that predisposition and you working with prenatal or natal newborns, children, or even mothers that were probably suffering with mental illness while pregnant.
Yeah, that's like a really big question, and I know there's like so much information that I can give you about that, but I can like share with you like a little bit about to kind of summarize a lot of this of the question that you're asking. I can summarize like from what my experience in working in emergency services with women that are pregnant, and even just a little bit about just how important history is to determine if you're predisposed to mental illness or anything. So, you know, it's like mental illness. I think people talk about mental illness and they think it's like separate from like health. Martin was like mentioning before, you know, I talked to like a lot of families about how if you have diabetes, you know, you're going to go see a specialist in diabetes care, and you're going to take medication to control your diabetes. You're going to, you know, and it's a lifelong disease, but you're seeing a doctor, you're believing the doctor always says, you know, eat better, exercise, take your medication, and you can live a long life if your diabetes is under control. Same thing if people have like heart issues. They do the same. They go to a heart specialist, and they follow their recommendations, and they take care of themselves according to the recommendations of the doctor. The same thing with mental illness. Mental illness, you should seek care with a mental health professional that is going to be able to determine, to help you understand and learn more about your mental illness, provide psychoeducation, which basically means understanding what mental illness is, understanding what your own illness is, because bipolar is different from schizophrenia is different from depression is different from anxiety, and so understanding what that means and how it impacts you, and how it's important to take care of yourself, and what the recommendations are, and what you need to follow. I worked in psychiatric emergency service for a big part of my career. So a total maybe like over 10 years of working in a psychiatric emergency service. So what I mean by that is that my job was primarily focused on assessing and diagnosing and developing a treatment plan for people that are in a state where they may need psychiatric care that may be involuntary. So I would go out to the emergency rooms and see people when they were essentially at their worst. So this is like post-suicide, when people are extremely psychiatric, when when people are in psychosis or in a state of psychosis that they need someone to come in and assess what is going on with this person. Is it mental health? Is it drugs? What can be going on with this person? So this is following a whole medical review. I would go in to the emergency department and I would assess people that were very, very ill. They're at the worst point of their lives. So I would determine if the person had capacity to make an informed decision. Part of that assessment also it was important to know about the family history. Family history of suicide, family history of mental illness. Why that is important, just like it's important to know if you have a history of cancer, a history of diabetes in your family, a history of heart disease in your family. Because what we have learned is that there is a predisposition to mental illness, just like with any other illness. And so family history is really important. In my case, I was going to call you sensei because I always call you sensei.
I'm the master, sensei.
What Mr. Vásquez was talking about is, like I shared with you, my little brother has been diagnosed with schizophrenia for well over a decade now. And when he started developing symptoms very, very early on, we were not aware what was happening to him. Like Mr. Vásquez said, we believe, it was a curse or something, happened where, this was a punishment from God. Or he was just like playing around and just pretending that he was ill or something else was happening. Maybe he was doing drugs or something. We later learned through he had a series of serious suicide attempts in his lifetime, and we learned that he has schizophrenia. And when I began my career, my work in mental health, I learned a lot about mental illness and family history and how that can put someone in I'm sorry, I'm losing my, because I'm talking about my brother and I'm really sensitive about that. I learned, just asking my mom, and my dad is no longer here, but I asked my mom about our family history, and I learned that one of my uncles on my paternal side, he had similar symptoms as my brother. And they later learned that he had some sort of psychosis, and most likely it was schizophrenia. So he ended his life. He walked into a train tracks, and he died. He died by suicide. So I learned that there is a family history there, and so that is really important to know. But in our culture, we really don't believe in these things sometimes. It's really hard for us to accept these things, and there is nothing wrong. It's social work and and even the new DSM-5, which is our it's kind of like our book, our psychiatric for psychologists, psychiatrists, and mental health professionals. We use this to diagnose people, and so in the DSM-5, there is room for acceptance of spirituality in some of the cases. So spirituality is important. And in all practice, we do believe that people have the right to choose and believe what they want to believe.
Correct.
And sometimes people can try out. They could seek someone from their church or from their religious practice to help out. But at one point, they know that is not helping, so that's when they seek psychiatric care. And unfortunately, many of the times it's access in our community, particularly here in Wyandotte County, through emergency services, through a call from someone that says that someone's acting weird or someone is threatening suicide or anything like that. And so they end up in the hospitals, and that's when an expert like myself or someone from the community mental health center comes in and and does the assessment and determines where they need to go. So many of the times here in Wyandotte County, that care is accessed in an emergency basis, where we would rather for people to be educated about mental health and what resources are available here in the community. And we have Wyandotte Center. Wyandotte Center is a designated mental health center for Wyandotte County. We do not institutionalize people anymore. So when deinstitutionalization happened, they assigned community mental health centers to work with communities to help people access care in their own home where they're most comfortable and get care there. When you talk about like, prenatal care, women that are, pregnant, many of the times pregnancy hormones can exacerbate symptoms of mental illness, depression, anxiety, things like that. So sometimes doctors recognize that there's something wrong at that point. And if you think about it, a lot of people once they're out of their mom's home, they really don't access care, particularly women, until they become pregnant. So there could be years that pass by, and you just believe that you're living this is who you are and stuff, until you go and see a doctor say, hey, this is not normal. So a lot of times us physicians, doctors, nurses, they're the ones that see some signs of mental illness that may need further assessment and treatment.
I mean, I have a plethora of different questions.
Yes.
And but I want to speak a little bit about demographics. And I don't want to assume anything. However, I'm gonna use that word. I'm assuming that any mental health is unforgiving, in the sense that it doesn't choose, oh, you are black, or you're Hispanic, or you're white. It basically affects everyone. Am I
Everyone,
wrong?
yeah, rich, poor, yeah.
No.
Every profession.
Every profession.
Every level of
Social,
educational
economic.
attainment. Yes, everyone.
Now, also for people that have very little, financially speaking, or people who don't have insurance, healthcare insurance, can they go to places like the Wyandotte County Center to receive care? Or what does it take? Because one of the things that I saw as a police officer, one of the contributors to crime was mental health. A lot of people with mental health were committing crimes, and sometimes it wasn't because they wanted to commit the crime. It's because sometimes some of them will tell us, I will hear the voice telling me, go and commit the crime. And I learned during my time as a police officer that approximately 47%, or almost 50% of the people that were incarcerated at the Wyandotte County Jail were under some kind of a psychotic medication. So are people that are in the social, in the lower version of the social stratification, the lower level, are they receiving the proper care?
I would say that's, like I said, it's a hard question to answer. Basically, because some people are aware through family history, maybe family members have utilized some of the services that are offered in the community, and some people are just unaware of the resources. So like I mentioned before, I believe just working in a Wyandotte County community for well over a decade. I no longer work for Wyandotte Center, but when I did work with them, most of the care was accessed through an emergency department. People are unaware that there are resources like Wyandotte Center. Like I mentioned, Wyandotte Center is the designated community mental health center for Wyandotte County. So they offer services to everyone, and they will offer an assessment to determine if they meet criteria for services. And I believe, and I know you will have someone with Wyandotte Center later on during your podcast, but I believe that they're still they offer a scale, like a payment scale, a fee scale to people that cannot afford the care. But going to Wyandotte Center will be important for anyone that believes that they are that they just, even if they just feel like I need someone to talk to, I don't feel the same way that I used to, I need to talk to someone. There's also crisis lines that are available, so people can utilize crisis lines, and I'll share that information. You probably could put it on to share with them. The crisis lines, they could call the crisis line is just talk to a mental health clinician, and they can tell them, just talk to them a little bit about what's going on, and they can provide resources there. For the Latino community, I know that we like going to El Centro a lot here in Wyandotte County. So I know that why not El Centro has had some funding allocated to help people get mental health services, so they can help them get access mental health care. I mean, there's many clinics, and people are well aware, like many of like the community partners here. Even like Bethel Community Center, I know that people have knowledge that there are resources for mental health care and how to access it. It's someone, you just have to say something.
Yeah.
Whether it's, whether you're recognizing that someone in your family is not doing well, or it's you yourself and you feel like different, you feel like this is not you. If you're having thoughts of, suicide or thoughts of harming yourself, I would encourage you to call the crisis line. Call them and talk to someone there, and they can provide you with steps of what you need to do to make sure that you take care of yourself.
You mentioned drugs here a little bit ago. What is the connection between drugs and depression? Is there a connection?
Or mental health issues?
Mental
issues
health.
in general.
Someone that might be depressed and doing drugs, does that affect them differently? Or maybe you're not feeling depressed, but you're doing excess amount of drugs. Does that affect your mental state?
Because we were talking about this prior to the interview. People are predisposed, as you said, and we were talking about people consuming, in the case of marijuana, the THC.
What's
the active THC, the active ingredient of marijuana, what makes people high today, is not the same level of THC that we had 10 years ago, let alone during Woodstock. Okay, so can the consumption of marijuana, can the consumption of
drugs,
other drugs such as mushrooms or synthetic drugs, can that affect or cause mental health issues? In particular, teenagers that they think, oh, marijuana is natural. How do they affect our mental health? Or do they cause?
Is there a connection?
The connection.
So you specifically want to know about drugs and mental health. So what research says, and what I've learned in just doing psychiatric care, is that many people will use drugs to cope with the symptoms of mental illness.
There we go.
So people will use drugs, to, feel better. Just, they want to get that high, or that, just temporary state of feeling, calm, or feeling that, or take uppers to feel better, to kind of like give them a boost of energy. So that is what I've seen as far as people utilizing drugs. Now, some drugs may cause cause psychosis. So we have like substance-induced psychosis states where people have behaviors when they're under the influence of certain substances that may seem or may mimic symptoms of like someone with schizophrenia or some sort of psychotic disorder. So we do see that. In order to determine if it is psychosis, or something or a psychosis that's induced by substances, you have to kind of like give it a waiting time. So we usually wait like 24-hour period and then assess again. So a person that presents to an emergency room and tests positive for substances, for illegal substances, we usually do not assess them while they're still under the influence. We give them some time to assess them and determine if it's something that was caused by the drugs, or if it's something that it's already present prior to using drugs. As far as like, yes, you talked about like the environment, you talked about like using drugs. I think everything in your life can either support you to be the best person that you can be, or can affect you in a different way. Person and environment theory, coming from a very abusive household, does that, is that person going to, how is that person going to turn out? Is that person going to be traumatized, have mental illness, and use substances, or is that person going to, be a successful person? And, a lot of that, there's a lot of unknowns, but there is a lot of research about that. And I will encourage you guys to look at a lot of the articles, like in the National Association of Social Work. There's a lot of, literature and that you can access through the internet about, what can contribute to mental illness. And So I would encourage you guys to look at those resources online.
So, regardless of ethnicity, cultural background, and I want to make sure that I say this. I think it's important. Or race. When we look at children, man, woman, or people that identify themselves through different genders, because I know for a fact that within the LGBT community, because of society, there were a lot of issues of mental health, because of the oppression. Let's be honest, because of the lack of acceptance of the LGBT community. Now, what do you see? Women that are suffering from what are the habitual victims of domestic abuse, or men. Where do you see most of this, or is it something that is level? Where the mental health, where do you see it the most? Do you see it the most with the children, women, men, or people of different genders? Where do you see it the most? Or in your case, the cases, I don't know if I'm explaining myself.
Yeah, I understand. What population or what gender is affected the most, or the most. And I think it's everyone. I think in emergency services, I've seen everything. I've seen every age, every different cultural backgrounds. I've seen different age ranges, ethnicities, socioeconomic statuses. I've seen everything. From my experience, what I have seen is a highest suicide completion rate among males.
Why do you think this then?
From what I've seen and what I understand, just through my job and my experiences, and I don't want to talk for everyone, but I've seen, I think men are held to a different level of just their roles as men in society. Maybe more they're in our culture,
their macho mentality.
Yeah, the macho mentality. Are you able to support your family? Loss of a job. The responsibilities that they have, and also men are less likely to access mental health care as well because of that.
Because of the macho mentality.
Well, I think in our culture, pride.
You're gonna be weak. You're gonna be seen as not the alpha male. You're gonna be seen as the weak person, and you can have a family. You can't lead a family. You can't do the things that a normal man will be able to do, right? So that's the reason why we avoid certain visits to the doctor. I don't want to. Sometimes I don't want to find out if there's really something wrong with me.
I heard that
so
a
if
lot.
I don't go there, I'm okay. But I know we're running out of time. I have another question for parents that have never dealt with mental health, depression, anything like that, but have kids that might be dealing with something like this and they don't know what to look for, they don't know what to do. What would you say to those parents to look for? What are the signs? What, the things that they should?
Because it affects everybody, not just the person that is suffering
Mm-hmm.
from the mental health issue, but also the family.
It affects the entire family, from the grandma living in the home to the little toddler, because there's always something going on. The environment is just tense, it's different. So as a mom, I would say that we have an internal kind of feeling that there's something wrong with our kids, and I would say to go with that feeling. As a professional, look for signs of changes in behavior with our children. Even just talks about just not wanting to be here no more. They don't know what they're doing with themselves. They feel a lot of pressure, and they notice that they're isolating. And maybe they're being more secretive, things like that. I think it's important. This is the most important thing to do, and I think even I wish this could be in Spanish, because I would love to tell moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and tias and everyone, to ask them about suicide.
Well, we're probably gonna have to do one in
Yes.
Spanish.
Yeah.
We will, and we'll do it, and then what we'll do is we pick subtitles. But I think it's important that we also do that.
Anytime with any age range, I think it's important if you're noticing that there's something different and you're close to this person, like like that feeling you have, like there's something different about them. Ask them, what is going on, and ask them about suicide. Have you thought about suicide? Just say it. Asking them about suicide is not going to make them, kill themselves. Just like a person that, like let's say a bank robber. A bank robber is not like if I tell you, like, have you thought about, robbing a bank? You're not going to go rob a bank, right? Because I asked you.
Yeah.
He's not going to do that. So, it's that same kind of like thing. It's, you ask them straight up about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? And say the word suicide. If they say yes, and you don't know what the hell to do, call one of the crisis lines. Call them and say, hey, I don't know what the next step is, because I think it's that next step that we worry about it. We don't know what to do. Well, what if they say yes? What do I do now? You don't necessarily have to go to the emergency room or call 911 or anything, but get some help at that point. Go, if it's during the day, go to Why Not Center. They have a crisis clinic. Call the crisis line and say, hey, I just asked my son about suicide. He says he wants to, he's thought about suicide, but I don't know what to do. Please tell me, like, what are some of the next steps? What's the, what should I be asking now? So that is really important to ask about suicide. Utilize the resources that we have. Like I said, there's a crisis clinic at Why Not Center, and I know that you guys will be having someone with Why Not Center here, particularly with PACES. So you can ask, that they have a crisis service for children as well. So, utilize those resources during the day. On the weekend, call the crisis line, or call someone, like, if you have like a sensei or a mentor or someone that you can trust, or reach out if you have a connection with a teacher, with another professional. I know that because I live and I work in the community, I know, like, a lot of, like, my comadre will call me and ask me, Celia, this is happening, what do I do next? Reach out to those people. Someone in your life that is going to be able to help you with a resource. If you don't know what to do, then ask someone that can help you get where the services and the help that you need at that time.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow. This has been really an amazing time, full of information, knowledge, things that I'm still learning about all this. Personally, I have never dealt with mental health, depression, anything like that. But I know people, I've seen people, I deal with people that are dealing with something like this, and I like to keep informed. I like to be able to give them some type of guidance. I'm not a professional, but I can maybe give them a little guidance, a little support, but they can always call the professionals.
And I think it's important to know that you're not alone there, that
No.
we speak about issues like this. I know what it's like to have anxiety. I know what it's like to have PTSD. I know what it's like. I know. I know the feeling of hypervigilancy, and we just saw it with Mr. C.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I have ever been depressed, but I know what it's like to be I know what it's like to be, medically speaking, what it's like to have anxiety and PTSD. That I know for a fact.
And I know there's a few people that are willing to share your stories about dealing with depression, and maybe we can have them one day, so maybe you'll be able to reach out to somebody that don't know how to deal with all this. I know this is a hard topic, but this is very important.
Very hard,
This is
very
very
taboo, and for a lot of people. You're not alone. And if you're feeling depressed, listen, reach out to us.
Yes.
We will talk to you, and if we can help you, we will look
We know the professionals.
for the
that-
true
yes.
professionals.
Yes.
Because again, we're just a couple of knuckle draggers. That's what we are.
Making
But you guys care about it, and
we
you
do.
guys
We care.
wouldn't
Yes.
wouldn't talk about it.
Thank
if
you.
guys-
Thank you. Yes.
Any last words for our viewers?
I just want to kind of echo what they said about there's someone there to help you. Utilize the resources that are available. Reach out to someone that can help you, to professionals or someone that you think is going to be able to help you navigate the system. Use the resources that are available in the community, like Wyandotte Center. You know, if you go to a center, tell someone what's happening. There is help. There are resources that can help. You know, a lot of people may have, like, you know, because of COVID, people have lost their jobs and things like that. But the government has allocated so much funding to mental health centers and to small community services, nonprofit organizations, to help you get the resources that you need to help you start a path of healing and feeling better about yourself. So I want to encourage you all to contact. I'll give them the crisis line number for Wyandotte Center, or just a general crisis line number. For youth, they can text. They love texting, so there's a line that you can use to talk about mental health issues, suicide, etc., etc.
Via text
Message.
Wow.
So I'll share all that information with you. And you know, I'm taking a pause right now from doing this, but I've worked in emergency psychiatric services. Not everybody's going to go to the manicomio. That doesn't happen anymore.
Manicomio, you know? The crazy house.
Yes, that's
an asylum.
An asylum, correct.
That no longer exists. You know, there are resources in the community to help you stay in the community with your family for you to get better. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to them, reach out to me, and I wish you all the best of luck and a well-being for everyone.
Well, we thank you for your time, your information, sharing your knowledge with us.
Extremely grateful.
Yes,
Thank you so much, because I think I know you at least a little bit, and you're one of my true local heroes. You're super strong, and I love how straightforward you have been with me throughout these years. And I love how you came from very humble beginning, and what you have gone through in life, and how much you have escalated.
Yeah, and that's a whole different story.
I know. So I am so grateful that Mr. C set up this this great interview. So everyone, thank you so much. Continue to support our little program. We don't have much, but whatever we have belongs to you. So Mr. C.
Yes, whatever we can do for our community, we'll be more than happy to do it. And remember, you're not alone, okay? Look forward, don't look back. Stay positive. Till next time.
Thank you.